Back in 1959, we were whirring through the nighttime sky over the Russian tundra when we got a reading on our heat signature radar. 9 hikers camping out on the mountainside near a forest's edge. But then, another signature appeared on the screen. It was racing out of the forest toward the group. We zoomed in on the night vision camera and saw that the rushing figure was none other than the Yeti. We swooped down in our flying saucer and fired our blasters, hollered over the intercom, and tried to get the attention of the 9. However, the hikers broke into a frenzy, and then the Soviet military fired missiles that were whizzing past the hull of our ship. And then another one came, and another one. And then we looked out, and there it was. The KGB just firing away. And then the nuclear explosions were making avalanche.
Okay. Chill out. Tell them what happened, though.
Oh, okay, so...
TLDR.
Yeah, well, all that to say, we abducted the hikers of the Dyatlov Pass.
Greetings and salutations, people of Earth and beyond. Welcome to Crop Circles, where every week we cover a myth, mystery, or paranormal subject. And my name is Ash. I forgot my name for a second. And I'm here with my...
I feel like I should forget my name.
Friend.
My friend?
I didn't know if friend was the right word.
I am Cory.
The great Cornholio.
Cornholio?
Yeah.
I thought I was Cornelius, the Coriander.
You're not Cornelius. That's my pillow pet
Cornelius?
From the other episode.
Yes, you're right. I'm Coriander.
Yeah. Coriander.
And I don't
Cornholio.
Cornholio? Cornholio?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from Ohio, so
exactly.
We play a lot of cornhole there.
The Great Cornholio. You don't know where that's from?
No.
It's from Beavis and Butthead.
I never watched Beavis and Butthead.
Oh my god, never mind.
You know what's funny is my dad wouldn't let me watch certain things as well, but he grew up on Ren and Stimpy, Beavis and Butthead, all that kind of stuff, Angry Beavers. I look back at that stuff now and I'm like, are you joking me? You watched that stuff and you wouldn't let me watch the other stuff like SpongeBob?
Right.
Fairly Odd Parents because it had magic.
Magic is, we gotta draw the line somewhere.
And you know where I drew my line?
Where?
Straight to space, because now I'm an extraterrestrial. That's what I identify as today, an extraterrestrial.
Oh, so you're just an alien today?
Yeah, you know what? I feel like I'm one of those, I'm the rope in a game of tug of war. That's what I identify as today.
Constant stress.
Oh, I feel like I'm doing good. I'm doing really, really good. I feel like I'm pulling it more and more and more, but then I feel like there's something on the other end tugging just as hard, just trying to distract me or keep me from being successful and doing the things I want to. So I'm slowly but surely pulling that rope back more toward myself, so that I'm getting my life in order. I'm getting everything kind of organized, and I think by the new year I'll probably be good to go. It's just the holiday season stressed me out.
It is stressful time.
Yeah.
I feel like the holidays are always such a hot mess. Holiday season.
I feel it can't be a hot mess. It's cold outside.
It's cold outside. Yeah, also let's talk about the weather. Not me pulling a Welcome to Night Vale reference, but this morning, well, you weren't awake. I was awake because it sounded like someone was throwing buckets of water at my window, and I decided, no, today's canceled, so I went back to sleep, and when I woke up, I guess, on the other side of the earth, and it was sunny and warm. Very confusing to wake up to. Did not make any sense.
Was it like a metal bucket? They threw it at your window?
It just sounded very chaotic.
Oh, they were emptying said bucket.
Yeah, they're emptying the bucket.
I thought the bucket smacked the window pane, and
I was like, what? Buckets of water.
I think the orange Home Depot buckets just crashing through your window this morning. Be like, no, that's how today's gonna start. Then I
live on the 4th floor. How would that happen?
Hey, Japan.
That's true. But yeah, so today's been very confusing for me, to say the least.
Well, good morning.
But yeah, thank you. Good morning. It's currently 8:30 in the night, and we're just getting started. I'm going to identify as the moment of confusion I had when I woke up this morning, so that's why I gave that backstory. But I'm just always confused perpetually.
Miley woke up confused the other day. She said that she woke up from a nap and her clock didn't change because every time she walks out of her room, the power goes off and the clock doesn't fix itself, so it just kind of stays. And so she went to sleep, woke up, and she was like, "Where am I?" And looked at the clock, and it was it's 10 a.m. and it's dark outside. What's going on? And she was just... that's what she explained to me, at least, and she's just
she woke up in the nth dimension. She was like,
that's a good nap.
She didn't say, "Where am I?" She said, "When am I?"
When am I?
Yeah.
She don't know what day it is. I feel that.
She's also here in the background.
Yeah,
as always.
I told that story on her behalf.
Yeah, because she's here. As per usual. But let's just get right into it because we have already tangented. Is that tangented?
We have tancholioed.
Tancholioed. We've tancholioed a little too far, but like we said earlier, we are covering the Dyatlov Pass.
Scary.
So scary.
And it's cold.
And it's snowy. Cold. Yeah, so we figured that it's cold, it's snowy in some places, not where we live, but somewhere.
It's definitely cold.
It's cold. It's not snowy.
No. And the wind cuts more than I think snow would.
Oh my god, the wind here is unreal. We also live right next to the ocean.
Yeah, so we're by Tokyo Bay, so it just like blows. Like we could. It's what, like a 2-minute walk to the ocean.
Yeah. But anyways,
we're talking about the Dyatlov Pass today.
Yeah, Dyatlov Pass. It was a story that we didn't expect to be so, like...
Complex,
research heavy, information heavy.
It's a lot.
We were like, oh, this is fun, because we've seen a lot of, or at least I saw a lot of, like, 30-minute podcasts on it. Like, what did we watch? The BuzzFeed video was, like, 7 minutes.
Yeah, not even a lot long.
And we were like, oh, this chill, this cool. And then when I was working on the script yesterday, trying to, like, get all the little details together, I realized that we were in way too deep.
Oh, yeah.
Deeper in the snow than I would have liked.
Amen.
So we took an extra day, tried to whittle it down, but there's just so much information out there. It is one of the most well-documented mysteries of all time because there's so much information that it's so unbelievable that we don't know what happened.
Exactly. Like the amount of information that we have on this topic, photos, diary entries, like from the people who were involved in this, and then even more so after that came, it's impeccable how we just don't know the answer to this mystery, and there's over 75 theories of what happened on the Dyatlov Pass. But how about we hop on in there, vomit all this information at you, and you can come up with your own theory by the end of it.
Exactly. So buckle up. I hope you guys have a long drive ahead of you. I hope you're cleaning the house or doing something where you can just sit down and listen to a lot of information, because we are going to get down to it.
Y'all about to learn today.
Yes, and just as a disclaimer, this episode is going to contain graphic descriptions of death. So if you guys don't like that, you might want to skip some of these, some of the parts where we get into the autopsies. And also we're going to try to pronounce a lot of Russian words. And if you don't like bad Russian,
just don't be here.
Don't be here.
Leave.
Just leave.
We don't want you here.
Yeah, so we're going to try our best, but none of us are Russian.
None of us are Russian.
I think Miley's secretly Russian. But that's a whole other story, because she tried to learn to speak Russian. I don't know if she ever succeeded. I think she's holding on to some secret information.
Are you part of the KGB?
That's what I'm saying.
Oh my god.
Look, that's a conspiracy. But anyways, let's get down to it. What even are we talking about? If you've never heard of the Dyatlov Pass, it is about 9 Russian hikers who died. 8 men and 2 women in Soviet Union Russia went and hiked in the northern Ural Mountains between the 1st and 2nd of February, and just, like I said, just died under very mysterious circumstances.
But one of those 8 men left early, correct? Because 8 plus 2 don't add up to 9.
Sorry, I didn't do math.
You good.
I have been up researching this.
You have been doing a lot of work. So
8 men
to clarify,
and 2 women. One of them yeeted themselves halfway through.
Yeah.
And there were 9 who ended up dying.
Yes.
So anyways, we'll get to that detail in a little bit. This experienced trekking group was from Ural Polytechnic Institute, led by Igor Dyatlov, whom the pass was later named after. So he did not have this pass named after him. He during their time, it was named something totally different.
It was like the Pass of the Dead or something.
No,
like
it was
that.
it was literally that.
It was pretty scary, and also UPI, not UTI, right?
Yes, the Ural Polytechnic Institute, not the other one. And each member of the group was there because they were experienced grade 2 hikers. They were all looking to get their grade 3 certification upon their return to level up, to be able to unlock a lot of other hikes.
Level up. Let's go.
As there was not a lot to do in the 50s as we have now. They didn't have
other than play the video game of life and go up in level, They
didn't have any of that. So they were just hiking as a hobby. I'm sure a lot of people still do that, but not me though.
Was it me, Gustavo, and Dakota hit Mount Fuji up earlier this year?
Yeah. How was that? Do you think you could be a grade 2 hiker though?
I don't know about that. I'd love to see.
Y'all barely made it back alive.
It was definitely a whole thing, but that's neither here or there.
Right.
We are in Russia right now.
But we're in Russia.
Let's talk about Russia.
Anyways, so they went to get their grade 3 certification, and it was the highest certification available at the time. So they were doing the most, literally the most. They were trying to get all the way up there. It required them to traverse over 300 kilometers. That's cool.
It was like a 21-day planned trip.
Yeah.
Nuts.
That's
and
so
no
much
snowmobiles like we have today.
Yeah, no.
Only like foot snowshoes by like feet and then skis. And sometimes, I mean, you'll find out here today, sometimes none of those were even used.
Exactly. And this case was not super looked into until 30 years after it happened, when the USSR fell and the case was available to the public, because during the time of this case, it was kind of locked away in a cabinet and never to be seen again, as we know of Soviet Union and Russia.
Yeah, they like to lock things up, kind of put it in a vault and hide it away if they didn't like how it was turning out. And we'll explain more about why they might have wanted to do that later.
Right, but that's what we're doing. We're researching the mysterious death of these 9 and what led to their fateful, horrible death.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you the beginning of this story, kind of give you like a really brief timeline of what went down. Basically, on January 23rd, 1959, around 9 p.m., the 10 hikers aged around 20 to 24, except for one of them was like 38 years old, that the 10 hikers of the Dyatlov group, they hopped on the number 43 train and headed to Serov. From Sverdlovsk. Sverdlovsk. You are correct. My brain did not read that.
There's a lot of consonants.
I mean, even though like we're not reading like the Russian alphabet for these, it's still so difficult to pronounce.
Sverdlovsk. Sorry.
They spent about a few days just trying to make their journey to the main hiking area. So they didn't even like start the main hike. They were just trying to travel from where they were to this main place to like then start forward on this hike up to the Ural Mountains. They ended up on the 28th. Yuri Yudin had to turn back because he had really poor health. He had sciatica and basically left the group as 9 members strong, one weaker than what they would have had, and little did they know that that would actually save his life. He was the only survivor of this Dyatlov group, and he didn't even go on the full hike. On the 1st and the 2nd of February, all of the members of the Dyatlov group died in a mysterious way, and you'll see all the details of that later, and it's kind of grim. And then on the 12th of February, the group was expected to be back in Vizhay. Vizhay? Is a city in Russia. They were meant to be back in that, be back then, but people will soon find out they never ended up making it back. What happened after that, Miss Ash?
So, after that, since they didn't make their arrival in the town, there was actually, I think the sister of one of the hikers was concerned, but everyone else was like, no, it'll take them a couple days. It's a very difficult hike. You know, don't stress. It's going to be fine. But then 9 days after their projected return on February 21st, people started to kind of freak out. So there was a search party and they made their way out. On February 26th, 5 days later, 2 members of the search party found a torn tent at the campsite and 9 sets of footprints that were calmly walking away from said campsite. And this led prosecutor Vasily Tempalov to open an official investigation to figure out where everybody was, because they found the campsite and nobody there. And it just had a ripped tent. It was in complete just chaos.
Yeah, like disarray.
Disarray.
The tent had fallen, collapsed, and then it's kind of weird that nobody was around to be found inside. So
why would they leave the comfort of the tent if there was something wrong? You know, if there was something happening.
Yeah.
And that's what leads us to the next day of February 27th. The investigators found their footprints and continued to do some more research on them and realized that the people who made these footprints were only wearing socks or one shoe or barefoot. There was a lot of
mystery. The snow?
In the snow.
Like, it was like negative 20 degrees outside, y'all. Like, this was cold. And they were wearing shoes.
Exactly. In literally February, Russia. So you can imagine how freezing it is. So they're kind of like, this is not good. I think at that point they kind of realized that they weren't going to find them alive, because if their footprints are literally footprints and not shoe prints, there's a problem.
I mean, you're going to find them footless.
Or footless, yeah.
Yeah, footloose.
I literally was about to say, I didn't want to be the one, but they were about to be footless.
Footless.
Yeah. So they all some of them led down to the edge of the nearby wood on the opposite side of the pass. So then that's where they kind of dug up some snow and ended up finding the bodies of Yuri Doroshenko and Georgy, also called Yuri Krivonishenko. and they were found literally only in their underwear and socks.
Yeah, and when they speak like underwear, they mean like things that would wear underneath their snow gear.
Right, like their long johns.
Yeah, they were just in their long johns and maybe a flannel at very most. Mm-hmm. So they weren't like naked.
Yeah, they were wearing like a thin layer, but naked in the grand scheme of things because it's cold outside.
Oh yeah, it's freezing. You might as well have been naked, you know?
Mm-hmm. And that was about a mile from the original campsite with the cut-up tent that we mentioned before. And they also found remains of a small fire along with the branches of a tree nearby that were broken all the way up to 5 meters high, suggesting that one of the two men that they had found had climbed up to look for something or got away from the snow, maybe looking for the camp.
Or they like broke down the branches like to make the fire, something of the nature, but yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't really find a clear connection because there were too many branches broken, I think, to just be attributed to the fire.
Truth.
So that was mysterious. But why did both of them end up in the same place near a small fire?
I couldn't tell you.
Weird.
But I can tell you a little bit about one of them that was underneath the tree. We can start with this first hiker named Yuri Doroshenko.
Yes.
He was 21 years of age, male, of course. I said he. Fourth year student of radio engineering at UPI. He had an impulsive personality, and he was famous at the school's hiking club, so he was pretty he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Basically, he had scared a bear away and kind of impressed Zena, one of the other hikers in the group that went along with them, on a previous hiking trip that they had gone on. Basically, the cause of death that they had in the report for him, that he died of hypothermia. And that has a whole bunch of symptoms that comes along with it. Basically, he died because he was cold. Mm-hmm. He was wearing a whole bunch of different set of wool socks on both feet. Socks on the left foot where they were burned. So with that fire being nearby underneath the tree, that kind of they feel like there's a connection there. I would say that makes sense. Livor mortis spots were spotted on the back. And on the back of the neck and torso and extremities, which was not consistent with the position of the body which was found in. So basically, these are spots, I believe, from where the blood pools when the body dies, because the blood will just kind of pool at the bottom of the body. So when it was there, but the spots of where the blood would pool weren't on the bottom of where the body was found.
Because he was found face down, but all the spots were on the back.
All the spots were on the back. So something makes you believe that maybe he was moved after death. Kind of crazy. The amount of urine was smaller than what would be expected in cause of death by hypothermia. The hypothermic death cases have significantly more urine in the bladder. So that's a little weird. Maybe he peed himself a little bit. I would have, because death is scary. And then there was a foamy gray fluid that was on his right cheek. That's kind of weird. It's not something that's normally seen with hypothermia. Sometimes hypothermia, like, it makes it so that you seize to death. Like, it will cause seizures, and you will just end up dying from the seizure that is caused from that. Before death of someone or something that was pressing on his chest cavity, that maybe there was some sort of damage there that would have forced some sort of foamy gray liquid on his mouth somehow. This forceful method was common for interrogation by the NKVD, Stalin's secret police, and the special forces. The cause could also be a nasty fall from the tree that was nearby. So basically, people are kind of trying to speculate here with him that maybe the secret police was involved. But what was up with his friend that he was found next to underneath that tree, Ash?
Yeah, so next to him, we found Georgy, also known as Yuri, two Yuris, Krivonishenko. He was 23 and male. He was best friends with Igor Dyatlov, and he was definitely the class clown type, as described by a lot of people who survived him and his family. And he ended up having a mandolin that he brought along on the journey. So that was a lot of fun. He was just out here playing songs for people. Jamming and vibing.
Okay.
But at one point, it did cause a little bit of trouble because during their journey, he did get arrested for disrupting the peace.
Yeah. How crazy is that? Yeah. The stress that would be like trying to get there, just like being detained by the police.
Yeah, so then he got detained, and the friends didn't know whether or not he was going to be released. Because mind you, again, this is like communist Russia. Like, they didn't know if he was going to get sent to, like, jail. Like, they didn't know what was going to happen to him, so they were very scared for him. But luckily, they ended up being able to talk the police into releasing him very soon after.
Yeah.
So they did get into some stress because of that. But he was just, the guy you keep around to keep everybody's spirits up.
Yeah, which is great. You need that in this kind of trip.
All the people who knew him. And the cause of death on report was hypothermia. He did have skin between his teeth, and it was missing from his hand, so he did kind of like bite some skin off of the back of his hand at some point. Is that what it suggested? So maybe, we are not really sure what happened, but some say that it might have been him trying to like bite himself, trying to see if he had like frostbite, like when you're trying to see if
just see if he could feel his hands.
Or maybe trying to stifle like a painful cry, not trying to like yell out loud. Just those are all kind of common.
That makes sense.
Responses.
That way, like, yeah, because sometimes I bite my fist, and that, like, just to, I don't know, just when I'm in pain or something. And I mean, if he would have cried out, maybe an avalanche would have happened,
Yeah.
So that would be like definitely deadly.
That's why they're not sure what he was doing, but those are two of the most common reactions to things.
Pulse of thief.
Yeah. So the context of his death, both of them had a pretty logical death pattern. There was tree with climb marks nearby, and then they had injuries that were consistent with that activity. But what wasn't consistent was their like state of undress.
Yeah, why were they naked?
Yeah. Like literally like a mile from campsite. So some people, experts, believe that this could be due to paradoxical undressing. This is like the theory that when you have hypothermia, your body feels like it's burning. Have you ever like held ice or something that's like super cold, but you feel like it's burning your skin? Like ice burns. Yeah. So I guess that in this theory, like when you're dying of hypothermia, some people experience this burning sensation and feel like they're too hot. So then they start to like take clothes off to like try to
cool down,
rebalance, but they're too cold. Like they just went from down one.
It's because their like nerve endings just get shot and their brain doesn't know what to do with it. I mean, I undress for no reason anyway, so I do that.
Paradoxical undressing. Cool theory.
Always.
It's also very paradoxical undressing isn't super proven yet either. It's just kind of like I said, a theory. It's not something that for sure happens to everybody,
of course,
but could happen in this situation given as they were dressed like that. But this theory ignores the fact that both of their bodies were undressed after they died. Or at least we think, because there was a lot of clothing that was found thereafter that was ripped with a knife or that was found on other bodies of other hikers that were in a separate location.
And that would kind of make sense with the liver, like one of those kind of like spots on the
liver mortis. Lividity is essentially
basically on the other Yuri, because then he would have been moved afterwards and someone would have taken his clothes.
So it's hard to say it was paradoxical undressing. If they did die of hypothermia, then they would have taken their own clothes off, but because of the lividity situation and because we found the clothes on other people, how is that making sense,
it's just it's a hypothesis, a theory of what could have happened.
And so it was very mysterious in that sense. And it's also mysterious because the hikers clearly showed a logical will to live. There was no clear state of panic and no illogical actions. They were both, just laid side by side, and their possessions were divided amongst other survivors, like we said. And there was also just a fire made. Like, there was no like crazy like dishevelment and stuff. So,
yeah, no. What's crazy is I think that like that fire was made, and he tried to stick his foot into the fire to try to like I don't know, warm himself up.
Yeah, who knows?
It's scary, the kind of position that they were put in,
Yeah, very mysterious though. So this is the first two bodies.
Yeah. And
later the same day, tell me what happens, Cory.
We found two more bodies in between the cedar tree that they were found underneath and then the tent site where they had camped out at. So in between there, you found two more bodies of Zina Komogorova. We're going to call her Zina. She has, was it Zinaida is her actual name? Yeah. But we're going to call her Zina. And then Igor Dyatlov, the leader of the group. They were both found by a search party later that same day in two different locations. Basically, one was, Dyatlov was found a little closer to the bodies at the tree, but Zina made it the furthest to the tent, if I remember correctly. But Zina, she was 22 years old. And she was a fifth-year student. Why the heck she's going to college for 5 years, I don't know. But she's way more way more determined than I am. That's for sure. She was over at UPI just with as well as the other ones, and being a radio engineer. And do they have that anymore? Do they do radio engineering?
Are we radio engineers?
Are we radio engineers? Because we are podcasters. Who knows?
I hope so.
Basically, Igor had a crush on her. He even had a picture of her in his pocket, which is kind of spicy, but she didn't like him back. She actually dated Doroshenko for a while, but broke up with him just before this whole thing. But they were on good terms. They were fine. There was a little stint where he tried offering her his gloves, and she refused until the rest of the group made her take them, which is kind of a little bit drama. But that's kind of fun.
I think she was just trying to be keeping the boundaries.
Yeah. She's like, no, that's weird, man. Let's
chill out, bro.
Yeah. It's too soon. I can't borrow your gloves yet. But it would never be too soon because, it would never be any later than that because she ended up dying of hypothermia as the cause of death for her by the coroner. She was better dressed than the rest of the bodies, especially Doroshenko and Krovanoshenko, underneath the cedar tree with multiple layers of nearly every article of clothing except for shoes. Still, no shoes on these people. Her injuries included a long, bright red bruise on the right side of her torso. The bruise looked like it was left from a baton, being smacked by something. And as well as numerous abrasions on the left cheekbone, bruised skin on the right side of the face, and a brownish red abrasion on the back of both hands in the knuckle joints. Also, a wound with jagged edges and missing skin on the back of the right hand. Some of this was kind of deemed from her falling down into the snow. And I also kind of think a lot of it was maybe from dragging herself through the snow, on all fours maybe for a little bit. I just went snowboarding for the first time maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And my knuckles are actually bruised from trying to lift myself up off the snow so much. And it was only for a couple hours. But who knows what actually happened to them. Maybe a lot of that stuff happened on the way there. Because I knew they were skiing and maybe they would there was photos of them falling down and trying to pick themselves out of the snow. And who actually knows? But these were some of the injuries that they found on her. And kind of a gruesome sight, to be honest. Yeah. But she was also found just meters away from Igor Dyatlov.
Yes, and we will be posting a photo on our Instagram so you guys can see all of, kind of a map of where everything is, because it is really hard to kind of visualize, explain. So if you're really interested, go ahead and check out our Instagram at Crop Circles Pod. You will see the photo there. But yeah, Igor Dyatlov, the namesake of this entire thing. He was only 23 years old. It blows my mind how young they all are. In my head, they were all in their 30s or 40s when I heard of this case, but they're literally so young. He's younger than I am.
Younger than me?
Yeah.
Just as old as Miley.
No, just 23.
Oh, not him, but one of them was 20, turning 21 during this whole thing. So
but Igor was 23 and he was male. He was the leader of the pack, like we've mentioned a few times, and he was a student of the 5th Faculty of Radio Engineering at UPI, just like Miss Xena girl over here. Mm-hmm. He was a talented engineer and designed and assembled a small radio during his second year that was used during his hikes, specifically in 1956 in the Saiyan Mountains. So he was out here making radios.
Like Dragon Ball Z?
Yes.
Super Saiyan Mountains?
Super Saiyan Mountains.
Oh, heck yeah.
He also designed a small stove that he used on his expeditions after 1958, and he brought with him on this trip. So it was the stove that they ended up finding.
A really big luxury to have out on in the tent, at that time, having something like that. So
so he invented this kind of small compact stove that was, I guess, very efficient for him in the way that he hiked. So good for him. Smart dude. His cause of death on record, like the previous people, was hypothermia. Igor Dyatlov was found a little ways away from the cedar, like you said, face up and head towards the tent as if he were attempting to return. Above the snow, only his hands were visible, and they were clenched into fists folded in front of his chest. He also had an unbuttoned jacket on, which is very unusual for someone that's freezing to death. Why would you have your outer layer unbuttoned if you're
cold,
Yeah, that was also something very suspicious that they found on his body. There were no internal injuries, but many small abrasions and bruises found on his hands and on his legs. Later on, after their investigation continued, Yuri Yudin, the only surviving member that turned back, like we mentioned earlier, will testify that the long-sleeve shirt they found on Igor Dyatlov's body was Yuri's. He gave it to Doroshenko, though, when he was departing. So it would be logical to assume that Dyatlov got it from the frozen body of Doroshenko after he had died. But that's all just speculation. We're not really sure when the shirt was given to Dyatlov. Mm-hmm. No shoes, but he did have on one cotton sock on his left foot and one woolen sock on his right foot. It's hard to explain, like, why he's even wearing non-matching socks, which I wear non-matching socks, but, on these...
it drives me nuts.
You don't like it? Oh, yeah, you don't like it. You hate it.
I have to have matching socks. I will not wear them otherwise. Like, it's such a pet peeve of mine.
You said, you're going to see his body and be like, pet peeve.
I'm like, well, he died for a reason.
No! Not this. But, in this time, especially like when you're hiking and stuff, you're going to be wearing like 3-4 socks. Why he's wearing one woolen sock and one cotton sock?
Maybe his right foot was warmer than the other. I don't know. Maybe it was colder. I don't know.
I don't know. But we can't explain the uneven distribution. And it could be that he had 2 socks on one foot when he was running and just had a completely naked foot on the other side. Also, that was an assumption that he was running or that he was like walking out the tent. And then he just switched the one sock from one foot to protect his bare foot. But again, why are they all barefoot? That is such a big question to me. Like, if you're such an experienced, like, hiker and outdoors person and you're out here inventing stuff, you would know that even if you're in an emergency, the first thing that you're going to grab is shoes or, like...
In that situation, yeah.
Because if you're trying to get away, you'll know that the cold's going to kill you.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd say that. I mean, I would most likely say that, like, they're not psychopaths. They're not sleeping in their socks. So it's nighttime when this is happening. They're sleeping barefoot. They ain't wearing their socks to bed because you know that the sock monster is going to come take them, or at least one of them, and then they'll have a missing sock for the rest of their life. It's just going to that's how it happened when I was 4, and now I've never worn socks to bed since. So, I mean, they woke up, and then something must have gotten them out of their tent in such a way, so quickly, that they didn't even think that that was even an option. Mm-hmm. Who knows? Who knows what would happen? But I will say, they found another body on the 5th.
Yeah, which was about, it was the 27th when they found those, so like 6 days later?
Yeah, the 5th of March is when they found Rustam Slobodin's body. They found him by soldiers. Soldiers found it like in between both of the bodies of Igor and Zina. Both of them were found on their way to the tent site, and in between the both of them, they found Rustam. And he was 23 years old, a male. He graduated from UPI in 58. And he was working as an Enterprise P.O. Box 10 at the time of the events. He was very athletic. People were actually pretty surprised. Even his father was like, I can't believe that he didn't make it back from this. Mm-hmm. Like, he's such a tough dude. Mm-hmm. How did that even happen? But he was very honest and decent, as other reports of people who knew him ethically. He was Russian, but his parents, both university professors, worked in Asia when he was born, and he gave him an Asian name.
Rustam? It was not native Russian, so that's like kind of a fact, a cool fact.
Oh, fun fact, a little tidbit.
Yeah, a little bit.
And he, like the other 4 hikers we find, hypothermia was the cause of his death. Officially. Rustam's body... Allegedly. Let me tell you. Let me hear it one more time. Allegedly. Rustam's body was found on March 5th, the day after the autopsy of the first 4 bodies, covered with 50 centimeters snow. Like, so he was buried in the snow about... Oh, I saw a chunk. There was a lot of snow on top of him. He was face down, heading towards the tent, so he was trying to make his way back, like kind of like Zina and Igor. But he was also better dressed than the previously found hikers, with at least 1 boot on. So this dude at least knew what he was doing. He at least had a boot on.
At least 1.
If the boot fits.
If the boot fits.
Mm-hmm. He had a fractured skull, though, which is kind of crazy.
That is a lot. That's also like that to me is like, oh, his cause of death, hypothermia, fractured skull, side condition.
I think right there that shows that he was more athletic than Igor, because he made it closer to the tent than Igor did, and he had a fractured skull, like freaking skull. Some suggest that the fracture in his skull would be done with some blunt object. Medical autopsy further states that Slobodin probably suffered loss of coordination. Mm-hmm. So, he was trying to, have a thumb war with somebody, and he was using his pinky, and we just had no idea why.
Skadoosh.
Injuries to the head are less common, especially bilateral ones. This one was kind of like to like the side and kind of shattered everywhere, and it kind of like wrapped around the front part of his skull, like above his eye, which is kind of funky looking, kind of a funky looking break. You can definitely look up what these autopsies and stuff look like. They have all that information visually on the internet. It is also unusual to harm the face and sides of the skull while the back of the head has no damage, so it's a little weird, a little sus, you know?
A lot of evidence that it was a pointed attack and not an accident.
That there was some sort of murder here, you know? Murder. In the case of Slobodin's body, we see the opposite. His injury pattern is a reverse of what we would usually see in injuries suffered by a freezing man in the last minutes of his life. It looks as if Rustem. Oh,
Jesus.
It looks as if Rustem fell repeatedly on his face as he was walking down the mountain, and every time he fell, he managed to hit the sides of his head.
Which is very unlikely.
I hit my elbow once, and I'm like, ah, and then 2 days later, hit that same spot, and I'm like, that sucked. Why? Why would I do that? And he's sitting there doing it over and over and over until he dies.
Well, that, yeah, it's just that's what would have had to happen if it was just falling, which is so unlikely.
So unlikely. Yeah. And he was in the snow. What was going on where, was there a rock in every single place he fell? Who knew? But all the bruises and scratches were blamed on the last-minute agony, although it is still somewhat unclear how he managed to harm himself, the exterior of his hands and legs, especially because he actually had some stuff on, He was the better dressed out of the 5 that we've already spoke about. But
throughout March and April, we had autopsies and funerals, but there were no new findings of other bodies made. And 2 months later, we finally find the bodies of the remaining 4 hikers. And that's a cliffhanger. Hope you guys have enjoyed the information so far. We're going to take a quick break.
We'll see you soon.
And we're back.
Hey, guys.
Back again.
Back again. Guess who's back
again. It's crop circles. We always end up singing a song. It's karaoke time.
We gotta keep it up.
Yeah, karaoke time is still going strong in this house.
Karaoke Cletus.
But anyways, we guys.
It's the next y'all is we guys.
Oh no. I just keep making new things up on this podcast.
You are so innovative.
So I know that we guys are all interested in this Dyatlov Pass since you've stuck around this long, but we did leave you on a cliffhanger. So, again, May 5th, 2 months after the last bodies were found, we finally make some progress, and the search parties are able to uncover the bodies of Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolevatov, Nikolai Thibault Brignoil, and Semyon Sasha Zolotaryov. All 4 of them were found pretty close together in a place that they like to call the Den.
Congratulations. You pronounce all those so well, and I'm probably going to butcher them later.
We're going to take it slow. I don't know if that was correct. If anyone knows Russian who's listening to this, probably just threw their phone across the room, threw their Alexa across the room and was like, what are they saying? Because I just made up an accent and hope for the best. I'm just kidding. I mean, we did watch the documentary and stuff, so we have some references, but I'm trying. Big trying. Yeah, big trying. So in May, the snow started melting, and a Mansi native named Kurikov with his dog noticed some cut up branches that were forming some kind of trail. So as the weather started to heat up, things become revealed that were stuck under the snow. So he followed this trail and dug in the snow for 2.5 meters until he found some things and decided to alert the search party. And then the bodies were eventually uncovered. There was a stream that was being created in the snow because it was melting and stuff for a couple months.
In between the ground and the snow, there was water that had melted. Yeah, makes sense.
And they found the bodies laying face down in it, causing rapid decomposition, which... Yeah.
These photos are nuts, man.
Yeah, if you do want to go on the Dyatlov Pass official website where they have an anthology of information, which is where we got a lot of our information today, they do have a lot of photos, albeit graphic, but are very telling of the horrors that they actually went through. So
yeah.
Definitely proceed with caution and respect, but it is very interesting to see something so well documented.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. So the den is actually like what they called this area because it was like a little cutout that they had made in the snow. And the 4 people found there were really trying to survive. They like made little like a kind of bed situation, not a bed, but like a floor of like branches and stuff, and like some of their extra clothes that they had from other people's bodies.
You could tell they had been there for a second.
Yeah, they had been there for a little bit, really trying their best to survive. And it makes this a lot more mysterious because if they were running from something or trying to get away from something, which is suggested as like the missing shoes, it's just, I don't know. I'll get into it. On one hand, it clearly shows that the members of the party were sane enough to do anything in their power to survive, and it also provides, some unclear kind of mystery as to why their attempts didn't work if they were all experienced outdoors people. Another question is, where did the knife that cut the branches go? Because when they found the bodies, they found a sheath, but no actual knife. Fun fact. Not so fun fact. Less fun fact. It was probably an idea of one of the members, Zolotaryov.
You're right.
Yeah, was one of the most experienced and I think the oldest, if I'm not mistaken, in the group. And he helped them create this little hideaway in the woods so they would, not die. Or hoping to not die.
Yeah, that'd be my best guess, too.
Yeah. And they clearly realized their threats and did everything that they could to preserve themselves. So they had, like I said, branches laid out in order to minimize contact of, like, their bodies to the snow. And in this area, they found the sweater and pants of Krivoshenko, one of the bodies earlier, who, like we said, they had cut clothes off and they had brought them over. Yeah. So they were probably dead as, they used their clothes. And both, as it turns out, had some radiation present on them, which is kind of creepy. We'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just made everything just so strange. They all also had significant bone damage, as if they were crushed by some kind of immense force, like if they were hit by a car or a truck of some sort. But obviously they're in the middle of the nowhere, so they're not gonna, have a car to get hit by. Hey, that's not funny.
No. I mean, but like, where are you gonna get a car? It's not like the Yetis coming through these Ural mountains and like
smack them,
and just like runs them over. That's not just how it works. No, the Yeti would have something smaller, something like a Prius.
A logical Prius.
Environmentally friendly, wouldn't it be? Like, I feel like he's all want to preserve what he's got going around him,
Right, but
go green.
There's no tracks to,
Yeah, there are no Prius
confirm
tracks.
The existence of Prius.
Prius wouldn't be able to hit them hard enough anyway.
So, yeah.
It'd be going too slow.
Yeah, a lot of doctors who I'm so sorry.
They had no snow tires for a Prius.
There are no snow tires.
I love Prius.
Do you have a
Miley
Prius? I didn't know.
Miley felt personally attacked because she had a Prius. I think I also said this to her, like, in California, it was always the Prius who wanted to cut me off. True. And that's why I found out she had one. I was like, man, Prius drivers don't know what's going on. They don't know how to drive. And she was like, oh, I guess.
Owning a Prius is controversial yet brave.
It's controversial and brave. Clearly. But to get back on track and out of the Prius and into the snow, the doctors compared the... Can I finish a sentence?
I'm sorry.
Go for it, Ash. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I also keep touching your feet. Every time we do this, I touch your feet. Please don't touch my foot.
No? Okay.
I do it on accident. My foot also fell asleep, so I can't really feel anything, and I'm scared.
Don't burn your foot. Don't think that you're no hypothermia here.
Okay. Anyways, the doctors who reviewed the autopsy reports.
Yeah.
The doctors who reviewed the autopsy reports compared the extent of the damage to literally being in a car accident or being crushed by someone who was like the size of a bear, basically.
Like a fall from like 60 feet up, and that was just not possible around this area.
Exactly. And a second thing that's like super notable about the den is that the bodies were actually found a few feet away from their improvised shelter and in a deeper part of the ravine. So they weren't even actually found within like the cutout, essentially. They were like a little ways away. Like they weren't hiding when this.
Yeah, they found like a little shelter that they had made, but they just were.
They weren't like fully in it. Like
like curled up.
Yeah. So some of the clothes that were taken from the bodies were placed on the cedar branches, and they were being used as like reserve clothes in case that they got too cold. So they weren't used, which leads us to believe that they weren't freezing to death.
Interesting.
So they had extras.
Spicy.
Yeah, like let's get into the individuals that were found here.
Yeah, let's talk about Ludmila.
Luda.
All the different names.
Yes.
Ludmila Dubinina. Yeah. She was 20 years old, crazy young for like in just my brain. I can't imagine she's doing something this crazy at that age. But she was the youngest of the Dyatlov group, and she was a 4-year student already at 20 years old. A 4-year student at the UPI University. Oh my goodness! I mean, she was already
Riley
an
went to
engineer.
university for 1 semester, not to expose her.
1 semester.
She showed up and then said bye.
But she wasn't 20 years old. 4 years into the whole thing. She was in the whole damn thing, doing engineering and economics majors. No way. No way, not me.
Not me.
You ain't gonna get me doing that
Not
stuff.
me either.
Nope. But from the first days of her studies, took an active part in the activities in the Institute Sports Club, and she was super, super loved by those around her, and she loved to sing and take pictures. She was a really great photographer, actually, and Ludmila, she had considerable mountaineering experience. During a hike through the eastern Asayan Mountains in 1957, she was actually shot in the leg by a random hunter who accompanied the students.
It was on accident, though.
Yeah. She wasn't like in no fight and he just took a rifle to her thigh. She was just like accidentally. She's taken a bullet before.
Yeah.
And she just kind of like walked it off, you know.
Dude, 50s Russia is wild. We got a guy who fought a bear. She took a bullet and like just so much.
Yeah, people are just like, yeah, you know, it happens.
And they're like experienced mountaineers in their young 20s.
What did we do in our 50s? Nothing, because we weren't even...
In the 50s? Well, in our early 20s, we were experienced Switch gamers. You more so than me. You're like an actual gamer. I just press buttons and hope for the best.
Hey, you know, that's what I do, too.
You've been doing it for longer than
I've been pressing buttons and hoping for the best for a lot longer.
Yeah, so, you know, that's comparable to significant mountaineering experience.
Yeah, I'd say comparable. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But not comparable to the internal bleeding due to severe chest trauma that Ludmila felt when she was pronounced dead. The coroner had a tough time finding all this stuff, and I mean, me seeing this stuff probably be kind of like sick to my stomach, but she was also missing her eyeballs and tongue. Yo, what kind of stew were you making, bro? Like,
yeah, it's horrible.
That's nasty. The fact that the tongue seemed to be ripped off or eaten or whatnot. The medical records, they simply said that the tongue was missing. There was no other real description. Yeah. They didn't really dive into that much. They were just like, oh, it's gone.
Like casually, they were like, the eyes are gone, mysterious orbs. Tongue's missing, like in like size 1 text.
Yeah, it was just like that's a little sus. Don't you think like there needs to be some sort of more? At
like,
least
is it cut? Was it like decomped? Yeah. Was it like there was
nothing was said? But she was face down in the snow where that running stream that was happening. Like, you know, like in between the snow and the ground, it was kind of like rushing over her face constantly. So that's kind of where people think that the eye's kind of decomposed, but the tongue's a bit. It's a thick muscle, you know. So she that's a little sus. That it probably was cut out in most people's theories. But Dominina. Ludmila, she basically she was lying on a kind of natural ledge with water rolling over her, so that's why you kind of see the eyes going away, and her mouth was open, so and kind of maybe the tongue went away, but that'd be some pretty crazy water to be able to do that kind of thing. But her nose was like shoved into her head, and her left cheekbone was partially exposed due to the decomposition. A massive hemorrhage in the heart's right atrium, and nearly all the ribs were fractured or broken. Basically, the ribs being crushed basically punctured the heart and destroyed that, which is like something that's crazy. That doesn't happen on normal like rib breakings. Like you can break a rib and not destroy your heart. Right. This kind of leads them to believe that something else was at play here, rather than her falling or someone doing something to her physically, like that something chucked her at a tree, or she was hit by something massive like a tree trunk or car, like we were talking earlier, just not a Prius. It is noted that the stomach contained about 100 grams of dark brown mucosal mass, and often misquoted as coagulated blood.
Yeah.
It is used by some of this as an indication that the heart was beating and the blood was flowing when the tongue was removed from the mouth. It wasn't ever said that it was blood, though. Like in the report, it never said like, "Hey, there's blood in the stomach." It was always like this mucosal mass or some sort of coagulated red fluid. You know, it was kind of weird. People
Unconfirmed blood.
People were like, why aren't you saying the word? We have a word for that stuff. It's called blood.
Yeah, but it was never like confirmed by the coroner, so we're not sure. I mean, according to
maybe
paper.
the coroner should put the corn down and start looking at the stomach and seeing what blood's inside. You know, just say it.
Who knows? Yeah, it's just weird because like obviously didn't die of hypothermia because her cause of death was like severe chest trauma and hemorrhaging, but like how? And why? Still more questions and no answers.
Crazy. She had a ton. She was probably one of the most gruesome out of the whole group, I think, in my opinion. One of the most, she was the worst off. Her body was just absolutely mangled. But let's compare it to Alexander Kolevatov. He was 24 years old, and he was a student as a nuclear physics major. How crazy is that? Nuclear physics? Ooh, I can't imagine. I could not imagine that. He was a 4-year student at UPI, and he lived in a gulag because his dad was a financial director from there. But he was not a prisoner. So he lived in a gulag, but he wasn't a prisoner there. Thank goodness, because if you've heard of anything that's gone down in the gulag, man.
Yeah, but I mean, if he was there, like living there, I'm assuming that he still saw something.
He was Russian. He would have seen something regardless during that time, I think.
That's so crazy.
Crazy.
We got gulags now. Gulags in the mix.
The gulag. Basically, his cause of death was hypothermia, is what they kind of came to a consensus on. But he had no shoes. But they were protected by some home-knitted woolen socks with some fire damage as well, which is weird because that's not the first time we've seen that. Lack of soft tissue around the eyes. Eyebrows were missing. So someone took his eyebrows, and now someone's walking around with 4 eyebrows, just being
chilling.
A 4-browed man on a 4-headed person, you know, unless they have a 5 head, and then that's why they have 4 brows. I guess that would make sense. The skull bones were exposed due to water, probably. We don't really know. He had a broken nose, open wound behind the ear, and a deformed neck that might be the result of a fight or even be the cause of his death. He had a snapped neck and a blow behind the ear, which is a common sign of killing performed by special forces. And so some people think this guy was like actually strangled, you know? Like he was kind of weird to have happened in the middle of, if he like died of freezing to death, which was the cause of death that the coroner came to a consensus on, but that doesn't make any sense here. However, we can't be sure about the whole like special forces thing since the autopsy report didn't specify any more details about the body.
Yeah, so again, very gruesome, very all internal though. Like except for the broken nose and stuff, but like a lot of it was like internal damage, which is kind of weird. Very like forceful. And we're going to move on to our third victim found on this day, Nikolai Thibault Brignolet.
It's French.
Yeah, Brignolet. I cannot, but you know.
I can't French.
They call him Thibault for short. Not
Thibault,
but like
not like Tim Thibault, but like just Thibault.
Like for Thibault,
like for his last name. Thibeaux.
Yeah. So Nikolai Thibault was 23 and male. He was more of a serious guy, allegedly, according to people who knew him. Wasn't like a downer, but he was, more stoic.
Yeah.
He graduated in 1958, so the year previous, with a major in civil engineering. Again, a lot of smarties up in here.
Well, we got some smart pantses here, but some of them didn't even have pantses, so that's a little weird.
It's a little weird. At the time of his death, he was working at the construction department of the city of Sverdlovsk. We said this earlier, the city that they were from. It was the local town.
You know that place.
Yeah. He was also one of the 2 hikers who died while wearing shoes.
He had the shoes?
He had both shoes.
Yeah, shoes.
So this leads people to believe that he was maybe outside of the tent when whatever happened. Like he was more prepared, or if depending on the theory, he was an initiator, who's to say, of like, an event. But it's all up in the air. His cause of death on report is a fatal skull injury, and he had multiple fractures to his temporal bone, which is, it was a lot. Again, there are photos all over the website, Dyatlov Pass, so if you want to know more specifically what they look like, go there. Again, proceed with caution. But in conclusion, it's shown that the damage to Thibault's head could have been the result of thrown objects, or like a wild fall, or just his body like falling multiple times.
Hey, let me tell you, but sometimes when I fall so hard. I fall so hard.
But you're also kind of tall.
I'm not like I'm 6 foot tall, but I fall stupider than some other people do, and so then like I hit everything on the way down. So if any of these people are just like me and are clumsy like that, like some people will be like, oh, you know, that'd be like 60-foot fall to be able to do that damage. But like, no, let me show you, I can do it in 5. Like I take that as a challenge.
No, but they're also experienced, like mountaineers.
I'm an experienced Switch gamer.
Yeah.
So you think I can't fall with style?
No, I don't think you can.
I'm Buzz Lightyear. Come on.
No. But anyways, like I was saying, his head injuries could have just... There was so many different ways he could have gotten them, but definitely not just falling from his own height. Like, it was very aggressive, as they would say in France. That's not what they say in France. The extensive, depressed, and multi-splintered fracture could be the result... of impact from an automobile moving at a high speed. Again, we're seeing something that is moving faster than like an average human, like because of how much splintering and like you know when you hit something really hard, it just breaks into more pieces. Like that's kind of like the movement that they're seeing. Forensic wise, it's kind of like you get that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyways, again, I keep saying anyways. Oh my god.
Anyways.
So one of the anyways, I'm just gonna keep saying it. I'm just gonna keep saying it. We're just gonna keep saying anyways, and we're not gonna get anywhere.
Hey, anyways.
The wheeze. Oh my god, I'm being attacked. So the autopsy guy was the coroner.
What was his name?
Vozdrozdeny.
Damn, you said that actually pretty good.
I think his name was Vozdrozdeny.
I was trying to get you.
The coroner excluded accidental fall on a rock as a possible cause for such a massive and unusual fracture. So even the coroner was like,
that ain't right.
He couldn't even accidentally fall on a rock this hard. Like something was purposely done to this man, which is so like frustrating to hear about, but it's also more conclusive than any of the other results that we've gotten on the autopsies thus far.
Yeah, what's crazy is that, well, this didn't happen to him. Well, what did?
Who knows? But not that though.
That didn't happen.
Yeah.
He didn't fall.
And our fourth and final victim found on May 5th was none other than Semyon Alexievich Sasha Zolotaryov.
Sasha.
So they called him Sasha throughout a lot of the expedition, but his given name was actually Semyon. He was 38 years old and male, and didn't previously know the group, but needed to upgrade his certification, so he asked to join, because they did post mountaineering expeditions and stuff at the school and different places, just so people knew what was going on. He was a war vet with awards, and again, far older than the rest of his counterparts. And at the time of the expedition, he was hired as an instructor to the Korovka tour base at the time. He was also just generally a little alienated because everyone else was going to school together, making friends, and he was just there to vibe, you know?
Yeah, but I feel like by like the first day or so of them starting their travels, they said they kind of like he integrated well.
Mm-hmm.
Not interrogated,
he integrated.
He actually they kind of welcomed him in like he was already part of the group, so that was nice.
So nice. But unfortunately, the nice times end pretty soon because his cause of death was severe chest trauma. Again, another aggressive, more gruesome death than the hypothermia causes before. Not saying that they're any less gross or like horrible, but
no. I mean, death is death. We all meet the same end somehow, but
these are just a lot different than the previous ones found. He had 5 broken ribs and was fully clothed and was the second person that had both shoes on. His eyeballs were missing. Soft tissues around the left eyebrow were also missing. But again, this is probably because of the decomposition with the stream that they were found in.
I mean, I think people are coming after eyebrows. Someone collected something.
Yeah, and he had an open wound on the right side of his skull that was so deep that it exposed the skull bone. So that's a lot. And it was pretty clear that this guy did not die from the cold because of how just
violent it was.
Yeah, like how mutilated his body was. They were very like, this is not just hypothermia. Like, this man's been suffering. He also was found with a camera around his neck, which later on was a surprise to Yuri Yudin, again, the sole survivor of this trek. He assumed that the group only had 4 cameras, and he had seen them because they had shown him all the evidence, or all the things that the belongings that the group had found. And Yuri did not recognize a 5th camera because he knew that there were only 4 to take pictures with. Weird. And was like, that's not something I have seen before. And unfortunately, on this camera, the melting water from the stream and from the snow damaged the film, so that they could not recover anything from the camera.
Sucks, man.
So sad. Semyon was also found holding a pen in one hand and a notepad in the other, but nothing was ever written, and probably he died right before he made any notes or any kind of memoir as to what was going on.
Well.
Yeah. Both Zolotaryov and Dubinina had an interesting pattern of injuries, just to get back to that. They were very similar in direction and force, despite their difference in, like, their shape, like, their body shape and stuff. So they both suffered, like I said, the broken ribs and, like, the wounds on the skull, and it was just really oddly similar. It suggests that what's causing these injuries was not just, like, one big blast or one big thing that happened. Like, it must have been like someone intentionally doing these things at separate times, or 2 different people doing it at similar times. It had to have been intentional though, because of their similar injuries. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I feel you.
That's what happened, and those are all of the bodies and all of the reports that we have.
All 9 accounted for. They're all there.
Yes, so let's continue on. What happened after this day?
On the 27th of May, radiation findings reported on clothes and tissues of Ludmila, Thibaut, Kolovatov, and on Zolotarov. So
all of the bodies from the den.
All the bodies in the den, all the 4 that were found, even the really, really, really just decomposed ones, they all had some sort of radiation on them, which was a little weird, a little sus, a little suspicious, a little weird. But then on the 28th of May, the case was officially closed and to be sealed until the fall of the USSR. Basically, it seemed like the government in Russia wanted to keep this under wraps and basically labeled it as, there was an avalanche. So that's kind of like why they ran out, and that's why they died. They died as of hypothermia, and that's just what happened.
Just a normal hiker trip.
Yeah, but these are some of the theories that people had to explain some of the strangeness, the crazy violently broken bodies of these hikers, and some of the things that just didn't add up. Here's 6 of the things that we came up with that we thought were probably the most important ones to talk about. The Yeti. The Manzi people. The aliens. That obviously exist. Duh. Hashtag aliens rights. Nuclear testing. Internal fighting between the hikers, which is, personally, I agree with that one probably the most. And then a military involvement /attack.
Dun, dun, dun. So let's get into these theories.
Yeah, let's get into
these. Try to explain why people think that this explains the demise of the hikers.
Yes. So the first one we're talking about, the Yeti, of course. Super cool, super fun, brother of Bigfoot. We love him. Maybe we'll see Sasquatch get, maybe do some sort of concert with the Yeti in the future. Who knows? Maybe we can find something like that. But this is what happened with the Yeti and the Dyatlov party. According to this theory, a Yeti came in and scared everyone out of the tent and then proceeded to stalk them and then kill them, and that's pretty much it. That's they stalked them and killed them. The Discovery Channel documentary,
quote unquote,
Russian Yeti, the killer lives, makes a sensation. What? Sensation. I've never seen that word in my life before. Yeah. Sensationalist mess of a genuine historical mystery. This show about Russian history declines to interview any Russian historians. Instead, we're treated to interviews with cryptid proponents, Jeff Meldrum and Igor Burtsev.
Basically, they were just like cryptozoologists interviewed and...
Basically, they didn't use any sort of person with facts and information. They used people with just theories of, like, Bigfoot and yada, 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 who
no offense to the
for.
cryptozoology community, but some people would just be weird.
Of course. They didn't use anybody accredited that has any sort of hard, cold facts. The central showpiece of the program is a black and white still photograph showing a dark, unidentified figure standing in the trees. It doesn't look like much, but it could be a Yeti. It's short and with rather thin arms, and it looks like a person in a winter coat, really. So it's probably just a picture of one of the party hiking. Then it was just a little blurry. So people have taken this and blown it way out of proportion and said it was a Yeti, and who's to know? Who's to know? I would say it's probably not a Yeti. There is very, very little evidence of a Yeti even existing, even though there is some that is just unidentified, and we kind of just say it that it's a Yeti, but I don't know if it's in there. I don't think it's in the Ural Mountains, if anything.
Who knows? But our next theory is that the Mansi people were responsible for this. Now, the Mansi people are an indigenous people of the Russian Siberian area, and they were the first prime suspects that the searchers and that the soldiers involved, yes, searchers and soldiers are different.
Yes.
They were all thinking that it was the native peoples. Mm-hmm. They have lived in the area for a long, long time, but as we all know, with many native peoples, their numbers were dwindling due to colonization and other unfortunate and terrible tragedies that happened to them. But these were all, in the area still. And members of this native group actually did try to help find the hikers as well. Some of them, like we mentioned earlier, joined forces and helped find the people in the den and did all that. So they were confused as to why they were all of a sudden being accused.
True.
When they were just trying to be helpful. There's a big theory that, as the storyline that the hikers ended up stealing something from a local shrine and they took it back to camp, very a la Indiana Jones, which is so, you know what I mean? It seems so far-fetched. And allegedly a shaman or other, higher up in the local people's group came by, cut the tent open, threw in a native drug, made them hallucinate, and all the hikers got out of the tent and began to follow their hallucinations, where then they were later followed and then killed by other tribe members. There hasn't been a crime committed, though, in the area for 3 decades since this time. And a quote from a witness report, Pavel Makhtiyarov, a Mansi native person, says, "Everyone goes to this mountain, Russian men and women, Mansi. There is no special prohibition to hike this mountain." So he was just out here chilling, everyone's allowed to come over here. We ain't had no problems for 3 decades during this time. Don't know why that would happen. Don't know why you're looking at us all suspicious
Truth.
And from the interrogation reports on this kind of shrine stealing hypothesis, they kind of made it clear that there were no sacred places surrounding the area that is now known as Dyatlov Pass. The theory was based on misinformation as to where ritual objects and places that were very significant for the people were, and there was just a complete lack of understanding for the Mansi people and how they practiced their religion. It was just the desire to have a politically correct hypothesis, and it would have been very convenient for yet another case as to how religion can affect your mind, especially during this time of, communist Russia. And that was kind of the situation that people thought had happened. If the Mansi people were responsible, they would know the area very well. They would know how to cover their tracks very well. But again, a lot of the things just don't add up, especially with personal accounts from other people in the tribe. Mm-hmm. So it does seem a little bit like, hey, you guys are here, you probably did it. A very...
Yeah, because they were the only people present in the area at the time.
And they weren't even super, super close. They were a ways away.
They were just happened to be around. They just they were just the nearest people that were even living close, because the Russians weren't actually even there at the time. I think Mansi people just had a village closer than anybody else there. It was just kind of easy to point a finger.
Yeah.
The next thing we have is the alien theory. Frame 34. A very, very, very famous photo from this. The bunch that came back from the hikers, they ended up taking a photo of the of this blurry light. They called a mysterious sun flare. Allegedly, about the same time, and Soviet armed forces did launch several rockets from Baikonur base, and although military claimed that the rockets landed in the North Ural Mountains, several geologists 70 kilometers from the mountains saw some glowing and pulsating orbits flying in the direction of the Kholat Syakhl on the day of the tragedy, and that is the mountain. And they were going to that area. The Dead Mountain is what that translates to. Lev Ivanov, a man who was in charge of the investigation at the Dyatlov Pass, lived a long life in the early 1990s. In an interview, a local journalist, he made a statement that during his investigation, he and E.P. Maslenikov both noticed that the pines in the forest were burned at the top. He also claims that A.P. Kurilenko, member of the Soviet Congress, along with his advisor A.F. Ash and you did this on purpose. Ashtonkin forced Ivanko to take out any reference to the unknown flying objects or other strange phenomena. This included photos of flying spheres drawn by the Manzi hunters and in other testimonies. Personally, I think the alien theory makes no sense. Because I think it's pretty much debunked by the fact that, I think obviously the Soviets were trying to test some sort of rockets, some sort of missiles at the time, and they had to do it somewhere. The middle of nowhere makes sense. It was the space race. It makes sense. But, it's kind of fun to think maybe it could have been aliens. Maybe, and I think you said that was your theory of choice, the alien theory, right?
No, I just like saying aliens.
Every time I've asked you, you're like, it's aliens.
No, I know, but I just like saying, okay, aliens.
Okay,
aliens. I don't know, that's why.
Okay, aliens. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that.
It's not my preferred theory, but it is a theory.
Oh, I would love to know your preferred at the end.
I don't really have one. But anyways, no, I just think nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. I think, the I'm just spoiled for choice. I think there's too many things that could have happened that I'm like, I don't know.
I feel that.
I feel like I say that at the end of every mystery, though.
Yeah.
I'm always like,
The alien theory basically just explains how, why there would be radioactivity on some of the hikers, why these burn marks would be there, and what would be kind of crazy enough to scare the hikers out of cutting their way out of their own tent, running out barefoot, and things like that. But at the end of the day, there's just no solid evidence to why that could actually be real.
So we have two other theories here. We have nuclear testing. Again, like you said, there was just maybe a missile because of the time period. You're talking about the space race. You're talking about Russia trying to become the hegemon of the world, trying to get all that nuclear power. Mm-hmm. They might have, the government might have just done a nuclear test nearby and might have accidentally killed them. Though it's unlikely because the radiation and other signs of damage are just not consistent with the landscape surrounding them. Why would it only affect the hikers' bodies? Things like that. There's also a theory about infrasound, which is a sound wave that can create insanity or pressure within a body, but that's also very disproven. It's just not super well researched, and we don't even know if that would have even happened in such an open area.
There's even a way that the mountain winds can cause that kind of infrasound that just by the way it hits the mountainside, that it can create just the right frequency to cause insanity and stuff, which would have made them kind of on edge and things like that. But they were on edge to begin with, so we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. But as far as the avalanche goes, which was what the government said happened, we know that a full-on avalanche did not actually happen, as the tree line and other equipment surrounding the tent were found upright and unfazed. So the trees were chilling. Some ski equipment was just up and chilling. I mean, buried in some snow, but it was left the same way as it was photographed in previous found footage. Mm-hmm. And a snow shelf could have possibly buried the tent, a little tiny baby version of an avalanche could have just spooked the tent a little bit. But the kind of gaps in this theory are the fact that the footprints left by everyone in the group just seemed to have walked away. When you run, you leave different kinds of sweeping footprints, according to forensics, and all these footprints were very much easy stepping ones. Mm-hmm. They didn't seem to have any panic in any of the 9 pairs of footprints. And, people with broken ribs and messes up chests would not have been transportable, especially to separate different places if they didn't have all the manpower.
Truth.
All together. And they were also experienced and well trained, so even if they knew that they had gotten hit by like a snow shelf, they would have known that their chance of freezing to death was way more likely than getting killed by, the full-on snow shelf that would have fallen on them. Like, they would have known that they at least would have had to get their footwear if there was something of that sort coming at them, because they know that the cold was the worst of the enemies at the time. So it's just interesting that there was no shoes, like, they were all at the camp.
So sus, man. There's just so much unclear
Right.
about this, but we have so much information on it too.
Right,
so
they were writing diaries, they were scrapbooking the whole time basically by taking photos that they would put together later. I mean, also, I don't know if we mentioned, but they did need to have this trip well documented, so then that way they could receive their certifications. That's why they were taking like a plethora of photos and doing individual diaries and stuff, because they all wanted to get their own certs when they got back.
Truth. My favorite theory of all of them is the internal fight between the hikers. I feel like that's actually what happened here, because this trip getting there was so crazy that someone tried getting arrested. Not that they attempted to do so, but someone tried to detain them via the police because they were playing music, so that caused them to be on edge. They stopped playing music. There were different things of like a drunk guy on one of the trains on the way there was like causing a big kerfuffle with the fact that like he was calling the police again on them because he thought that they stole his alcohol. There was another thing where like they tried making one guy sleep next to the front of the tent, and he was calling betrayal on the rest of the group. So everyone was kind of on edge, and everyone believed that maybe things had boiled over and a fight broke out. You see these in the journals that they've documented with these couple squabbles and things amongst the group. But the prime subject of this theory is the oldest and most mysterious member, Sasha, or actually his name was Semyon, because they did not actually know his real name. He did not know the hikers previously to this and was detached from them, so he was more likely to be misinterpret their actions as rude or something along those lines. In this theory, people believe that he began to grow annoyed of the younger men in the party and ended up in an all-out rage, possibly due to some Arctic hysteria, and then ended up creating an alliance with Ludmila and Alexander Kolovatov. I cannot pronounce these words. You're way better at Russian than I am. And then Nikolai Thibault, and basically banded together with them and ended up getting them killed at the den later on, after everyone else had died from the fight previously. His secret tattoos and extensive knowledge of how to seek shelter and kill, and how to kill, make him a prime suspect of how this all ends up breaking out. And I can see that. I can see this happening. With the fact that like there's already high tension, and then like this guy basically could have done something along this lines. Some people even said he was KGB, giving him like a lot of extensive ways of doing this. I think it makes sense with the tongue missing. I feel like he would be the only one really qualified with the know-how and like the willingness to do something like that. But who knows what you're willing to do in times of hardship and of this nature, So at the end of the day, I think this is the most logical form of what happened, because that if they were to cut themselves out of the tent, something dangerous inside the tent must have happened. But even some people say them cutting themselves out of the tent was some sort of theorized thing, not even to be hard, concrete proof that they actually did that. So, Ash, what was the last thing that we had theorized that this could possibly have been that killed our 9 hikers?
So the last theory that we have is a military attack. It's just a theory that the Dyatlov Pass group members stumbled upon a military testing area and were either killed by Soviet soldiers protecting the area, or were scared into fleeing by the sounds of nearby explosions. So again, kind of tying into that missile theory, or something like that. So one of the possible scenarios is that there was a power struggle and an illegal use of military equipment, helicopters in particular, by high-ranking officers. There's also a sub-theory saying that they had, a secret appointed operator that was Semyon. Again, they're putting the blame on Semyon Zolotaryov, the oldest member of the group, saying that, they were just they planted him in order to help do some kind of military thing to them. Maybe they were doing illegal things up in that area and they didn't want anybody to find out. So in order to stop them, they had to have a man on the inside. And remember, he did join last minute, low key, and was unknown to the group previously. They said that the camera was given to him by the military, so then that he could get photos and things that they all had in case they were doing some sus activities when all they were doing was hiking. The military had it out for them, according to this theory. And the reason for all their deaths was that they were just spotted taking photos of the things that the government didn't want to let out.
Which makes sense to why the Russian government at the time wanted to kind of wrap up this investigation so quickly and hide it for 30 years before it could actually be properly investigated, because maybe they were trying to hide something that they didn't want out in the public at the time.
Yes, because
especially with the space race and everything, and with the whole USSR button heads, pretty hardcore then.
Yeah, so it was just, so many different things. And these are just a few of the theories. There are so many other ones, like methanol poisoning, which is another one. There was also like a shrooms theory. There was a gravity theory. There was also like a teleportation theory with wormholes involved.
Hey,
Let me tell you, they
I've
range.
always thought that gravity was a theory.
Gravity?
Yeah. Gravity's a theory.
It is a theory.
Gravity's not real.
No. But, as we all perceive the world. But there are just so many things online that we just don't, you all can look into them if you want to, but these are just a couple of the bigger ones that we were able to find on the website. Again, a huge thank you to the dyatlovpass.com site. They are documenting and translating everything into English, which is one of our biggest sources, along with a few other things that we found online. Mm-hmm. But I think by far they were our main source. If you guys want to go on their website, check out all the other information and details that we kind of skipped out on, because we did leave out quite a lot.
There's so much about this case. Like we said, this is the most information heavy case that we've seen, and there's still no concrete answer of what happened here. And maybe the avalanche theory is true. Who knows? But I'm definitely not convinced about that. So definitely go and check out this information on yourself, and go see what your theory that you agree with most is, and let us know.
Yeah, I personally think that maybe there was some kind of internal fight just because of how separate everybody was and how variously ranged their injuries were. I don't think that it was just a single event or like one reason. There was probably multiple different fights or situations that happened between the different groups of them.
Yeah, some people even say there's no way that only 9 people were there at this site at the same time. There must have been other people involved at one point. So I guess that kind of makes sense too, but there weren't footprints to prove that we know of, and I wasn't there. So crazy things have happened. But we appreciate you guys listening through this whole thing and sticking with us.
Very information heavy. I'm glad if you made it this far. Shout out to you. It's been a wild ride. This has been the most stressful research bit that we've done, but I hope that it paid off, and I hope you guys learned something really cool.
Truth.
I learned so many cool things, and I also learned that 1959 was not a leap year.
No.
Nope. You know all leap years are divisible by 4.
Who knew?
Who knew? Not me until this episode. I had to look it up to see like the difference in days between some, and I was like, was this? Because a lot of stuff happened in February. I was like, how many days?
How many days was this in February?
Just curious, yeah.
But also, the only really thing I can figure out is like pop culture wise is the Devil's Pass movie that came out 2013. It came out. It was based off this event. It was about like American students going out and checking out this Devil's Pass, this Dyatlov Pass, to see what actually went down for themselves, and it turned into some horror movie shenanigans, and it looks pretty cheesy. It looks pretty good up until like the CGI is involved. So definitely, if you want to watch this a corny movie, or if you want us to watch it, let us know. We can watch it and give you guys a review of what we think afterwards. Later on next week's podcast.
Yeah. But thank you guys so much for listening. Whether you believe in aliens, the Yeti, or if it was just a simple fight, or the government just being shady, who's to say what really happened to the 9 hikers of the Dyatlov Pass? Who's to say?
Who's to say?
We'll never probably know. Maybe with, forensics and things happening now, we'll be able to get a better picture. But as of now, it is a huge mystery.
Truth.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining.
See you guys later.
Bye. 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 Bye.